Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. Going to have a look at the weather next week's 10 days. In today's video, this will take us to around the 27th of August. So we're running towards the end of the month, really, with this update. And a lot of uncertainty about next week's weather in the recent updates, of course. Did the third late summer bank holiday weekend update last night, and that was very cool, actually, for the bank holiday weekend. But the models have improved a little bit this morning, so it looks like we might be heading more towards high pressure winning out next week. But I'm still not totally convinced that models have got next week's weather pinned down at this stage. But it does appear we have got some agreement, anyway, between the GFS and the ECMWF. Now, right at the very end of the video, I'm going to show you the Beijing Climate Centre 500 millibar height anomaly for the winter. It'll be the first time you've seen any output from Beijing Climate Centre for this winter. Probably shouldn't be including that yet. But I had a look at CFS, of course, in one of the videos last month, and I thought I'd just give you a quick look at the Beijing Climate Centre for the coming winter. That'll be right at the very end of the video. But let's deal with the next week to 10 days first of all. We're going to start off actually in the Atlantic in terms of hurricane activity. So we know, of course, we've got Hurricane Gert, which is in the northern, or I should say northwestern part of the Atlantic Ocean at the moment. That is where Gert is currently residing, Category 1 hurricane, which doesn't sound like much. If you just find yourself within the path of Gert, you'd be getting sort of gusts of wind up to around 100, 120 miles an hour. So even a Category 1 will pack a real punch. That will be sort of downgraded in the next 24 or so hours as it moves into the cooler waters of the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, further southwards in the tropical part of the Atlantic, I was talking about this in the videos yesterday, of course, we've got more developments going on. So we've got these X's, we've got one X just there, one X just there, and one X just here. Now you'll notice they are different colours. Yesterday, these three X's were all sort of coloured yellow. You'll notice now we've got a yellow X over here, we've got an orange X just there, we've got a red X just there. Where we have the red X, that is telling us that we've got a high probability, 60% or more, of seeing that development. At the moment, it's just a development, seeing that development upgraded towards either tropical storm, subtropical depression, or maybe even a hurricane. So we might be having another hurricane beginning to get going just here, and this one also, that's got a 40 to 60% chance of going up towards tropical storm status, and this one over towards Africa, that's a much lower chance. But of course, as that drifts over towards the Caribbean, which is this area just here, as that drifts over towards the Caribbean, that one too might get upgraded in terms of its development. This chart is coming from the National Hurricane Centre, by the way, which is part of NOAA. So at the moment, it's this one that we've got to focus on just here, but these two back here, they might develop into some sort of a storm, maybe a hurricane further down the track. We'll be keeping an eye on things over the next few days, of course. Now, because of these tropical developments, it means that model reliability at the moment is going to be very poor. This is often a poor time for model reliability, sort of late August into September. You do struggle a little bit to ping down the detail on models, particularly out to around 5 to 10 days. Within 5 days, they're still pretty decent, but 5 to 10 days, the reliability at this time of year does tend to plunge a little bit. So we'll have to keep that at the back of our mind for this time of year when we're doing these updates that are looking at sort of a week to 10 day time frame. Probably, some of this at least, probably explains why models have been struggling so much in terms of next week's weather. So anyway, let's deal with weather next week, 10 days. We've got the ECMWF here on the top. The GFS is on the bottom. These are the 500 millibar height anomaly flow charts from the PSU, Penn State University website. On these charts, blue will be extrapolating to low pressure, and orange and red will be extrapolating to high pressure. Now, as I say, we have shifted this morning more towards high pressure for next week. So we've got this area of above average heights here in the Atlantic with the ECMWF and extending into the UK, central parts of Europe as well. The jet stream is going up here, so it is almost to the north of us, but a little bit of influence from the jet stream. It's not totally settled. For southern areas, probably mostly dry, but for the north, probably still a little bit more of an influence from the Atlantic and from the jet stream. However, the GFS really is placing us under a ridge today. So we've got this large build of above average heights in the Atlantic and extending into the UK as well, with the jet stream going to the north of the country. That's a more settled scenario from the GFS. You'd expect a lot of dry and quite warm weather with that. This chart is the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. The red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average. We're quite warm at the moment. It's pretty humid, but in the next 24 hours, it's going to turn cooler, and that cooler weather is going to stay with us into the weekend, first half weekend anyway. Later in the weekend and early next week, the temperatures lift up again. That's as we get the humid remains of Hurricane Gert coming in just as an area of low pressure. And then later next week, the temperatures are lowering down again. Although that is under mostly high pressure, so although the upper air temperatures will be a little bit cooler through the middle and last stages of next week, actually, to be honest, it'll feel fairly warm in any sunshine that does occur. Precipitation-wise, we've got some showery bursts of rain over the next few days, but this period just here, which is taking us sort of around the middle of next week onwards through to the end of next week and into bank holiday weekend, that is looking mostly dry. Actually, a lot of dry weather coming up. And then maybe as we get through to the very end of August into start of September, just here, some precipitation spikes beginning to return. That's a very, very long way off, of course. Temperature anomalies for the next week. This goes from the 17th through 25th of August, and we're just basically coming out around average. No deviation with the temperatures. And no real deviation with the precipitation either. So the precipitation anomaly from the 17th to 25th of August, that is looking around average. Southern areas, a bit on the drier side. Northern areas, a little bit on the wetter side, perhaps. But overall, again, no big deviation. So from a temperature and precipitation perspective, not a huge amount going on, actually, in the week ahead. So this is how the GFS is picking things up for Sunday. Now, this area of low pressure just here is the remains of Hurricane Gert out to the west of the UK at 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. Through most of the weekend, we're actually going to find ourselves under a little bit of a ridge of high pressure, but by the end of Sunday into Monday, low pressure started to move in from the Atlantic. Now, the exact position of this low pressure and where the rain associated with it is going to be, that's proving very problematical. At the moment, it looks like it's mainly focusing on the north and the west, because it's still a little way off, and as ever with these areas of low pressure that contain elements of tropical or hurricane type features, and that's what it is. It's just elements of that hurricane. It isn't by any stretch of the imagination a hurricane in its own right. But whenever you get these areas of low pressure that have tropical remains, it's always a little bit uncertain as to their exact track. At the moment, it looks like the north and west are going to get any precipitation from this, with the south and east remaining close to this build of pressure over on the continent. That's how things are looking by the end of Monday. Low pressure is centering over Scotland, bringing no doubt quite a lot of rain, central northern parts of the country, but down in the south there should be a reasonable amount of dry weather. Early next week, we take that low pressure out into the North Sea, so by Tuesday, for example, we're pulling down the winds from the northwest. Pressure is beginning to build on its backside through the Atlantic, and then that's the trend through middle and last stages of next week. We take that low pressure over towards Denmark and the Baltic Sea by Wednesday, and we build in this large ridge of high pressure. Now notice coming around the top of this high pressure is a northerly flow, because the air is doing something like this around the high pressure. So actually we're bringing down quite a cool northerly wind there through the middle part of next week, and that explains the drop in temperature that we saw on the GFS ensembles the middle part of next week. But this looks quite good. So by Thursday we've got a 1,030 millibar area of high pressure sitting right over top of the country. Bear in mind the air associated with this is fairly cool, or the upper air associated with this is very cool. So you would expect quite cold nights in that area of high pressure, but in the day, because it's still August, it's still summer, it is going to feel very pleasantly warm with temperatures at least into the upper teens or low 20s Celsius. And then that high pressure sticks around as we run it towards the bank holiday weekend. This takes us Friday 25th of August, lots of high pressure dominating then, and it continues into the bank holiday weekend really. This is day 10, which is Sunday the 27th of August. Still really under that ridge of high pressure, though it is being put under pressure by this quite deep area of low pressure up here. But there's still enough ridging going on to be keeping us mostly dry, settled, and fairly warm. Again, bear in mind we will be probably seeing some quite chilly nights with this, but by day in the sunshine it would definitely be pleasantly warm. That is the GFS. This is the ECM, and again this is for Monday where we're starting off. We've got this area of low pressure here, which is the remains of tropical or of Hurricane Gert, and as we go through into Tuesday, it's a little bit delayed in moving this low pressure in, so that is still the remains of Hurricane Gert on the 22nd of August, next Tuesday. And what's happening here is that we're actually bringing up quite a warm, humid, southerly airflow. It is beginning to look a little bit thundery, this. The GFS isn't really going for this, but this low just here around Biscay, that looks like it's thundery low. It looks like it's being dragged in that sort of direction as this low pressure is stalling out here. So we're doing something a bit like that with the flow and with the jet stream. So ECM is implying there might be something thundery happening on Tuesday next week. By Wednesday, then the remains of Gert and the low pressure associated with it pushing through the country. Again, perhaps some sort of a thundery trigger just here, but it is moving in that direction. So eventually, by the time we get through to Thursday next week, we are sort of ending up where the GFS was at that point, with high pressure beginning to build back in from the Atlantic and a slightly cooler northwesterly airflow. And that takes us up to the bank holiday weekend, where, to be honest, it's not looking too bad. This is Saturday 26th of August. We've got high pressure from the Azores ridging in across much of the country. That will be really quite pleasant. By day 10, Sunday 27th of August, when we saw it on the height anomaly chart, it's a little bit more unsettled here, with low pressure up there, probably bringing some influence from the jet stream into Scotland. But for England and Wales, actually still a lot of dry, fine and fairly pleasant conditions. So it's a little bit uncertain still next week, but I think the way forward is beginning to sort of work itself out. We've got to deal with the remains of Hurricane Gert first of all on Monday and Tuesday. Exactly what's going to happen there is causing quite a bit of uncertainty. The ECM is implying, no more than that, but it's implying risk of something a bit thundery around Tuesday. But by Wednesday, whichever model we're looking at, that low pressure, however it happens, whether it's thundery or whether it's just general rain, that low pressure gets out of the way, moves off to the North Sea. And then after that, from Wednesday onwards, we build in the ridge from the Azores high. And that should, it may, take us into quite a decent late summer bank holiday weekend. Now, I promised you at the beginning of the video that I'd show you the 500 millibar height anomaly from the Beijing Climate Centre for the winter, for the very first time this year. So this is it. This is the 500 millibar height anomaly generated this month in August for the winter of 2017-2018, and it actually looks quite interesting from a cold perspective, because we've got a lot of red going on up here. It's always a job on me's new Beijing Climate Centre charts to work out where we are, by the way. We're just here in the top right hand corner of the chart as you're looking at it, so a little bit difficult to work out where we are, but that's where we are. And to our north we've got a lot of red going on, which is indicating high pressure or northern blocking. And then underneath this high pressure, we've got a trough of low pressure through the central part of the Atlantic, and that's extending into Europe over here as well. And you would probably be expecting a bit of an easterly or maybe even northeasterly influence to be coming in. Now, in terms of temperature anomaly, for many eastern parts of Europe, it's looking really quite cold with this. But for us, actually, the Bayesian Climate Centre doesn't see that cold getting into the west of Europe. But that's a very, very long way off. And I wouldn't necessarily take the temperature and precipitation anomalies too seriously. But from a heights perspective, that does look quite interesting, to say the least. It's very different to what the CFS V2 is going for this winter. It's all far too far away to take it seriously in any case. So don't be getting excited about that. Equally, don't be all that concerned about what CFS is doing, which is very zonal for the winter either. Thought I'd just throw that in. Probably shouldn't have done it, but I know you enjoy a quick sneak peek at the winter charts when we get to this sort of late summer period. So that's all for now. We'll do JMA Friday tomorrow. Come back for that. It'll take us through the next month into September. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.